All right, ladies and gents, welcome back to another episode, and a special edition episode of Blue Grit Radio. Today I'm joined by Zach. Zach is a prospective police applicant. He's getting ready for the testing, and he reached out to get some insight and some advice and some practice at the infamous oral board. So this is all for your learning abilities. So Zach, thanks for being on the call, man. Thanks for reaching out.
Hey, yeah, that's great to be on here. I appreciate it.
Yeah,
it's something I want to learn.
Yeah, it's good, man. It's such a different thing, right? A lot of people have been through some sort of job interview, so it's a very different ball game. I learned, like a lot of people, trial by fire, but so much can be learned from doing practice like this. So good kudos to you for being willing to share your experience for the betterment of yourself and others.
Yeah, I'm very excited, and hopefully don't scatter myself too bad.
No, you're good. And just for some context for the listeners, Zach and I talked for a little while before we kicked the recording off, so I know a little bit about his story. He has not done an oral board yet. He has, some exposure to what they're like. People, law enforcement in his life, listening to the podcast for a little bit. So what we're going to do in this episode is I'm going to run him through a mock oral board. We're going to treat it as if once we go into, game time, it's going to be acting as if, right? I'm not going to really offer much along the way, but I'm going to be taking some notes, and feel free to take some notes along for yourself. And maybe you have your own thoughts where you can, comment on the social media or whatnot, as far as positive critiques, and we will debrief it, right? So we'll do an after action where we'll unpack some specifics and some general things at the latter part of the episode. So, you ready, Zach?
I'm ready.
All right, fantastic. So you showed up in your suit and tie. Everything's looking all right. You were on time / early, definitely early, waiting in the parking lot, going over your game plan, going over your notes and some talking points, some things, and getting in the right mindset, whether it's listening to your pump-up music or just zenning out. So you've been led into the room, by the recruiter or by the, command staff personnel. And here we go. So, Zach, thanks for coming in today. Appreciate your time and taking a look at our agency.
Yeah, I'm very interested in your agency and what it has to offer, and looking forward to this oral board.
Fantastic. So, first off, I just want you to tell me and the other members of the board a little bit about yourself and why you're looking at a career in law enforcement.
Well, I grew up in a small town, and personally didn't have much crime in it. Grew up in Enumclaw. It's a small cow town in Washington here, and really didn't have a whole lot, and as I grew up, it slowly, visiting and my grandparents, or it had slowly, I'd noticed, this is happening or that's happening, or maybe a bike got stolen out of their front yard or something like that. And as a kid, you don't really know, other than maybe you see a police car going down the road, what they really do and what it's really about. And then my family member being, in law enforcement, affected my life as well as I grew up, seeing him, having him come in for, family day at school and do like a kind of a show and tell, or, career day. And just kind of slowly growing up and seeing that and that person evolve in my life has just excelled for me wanting to be a police officer, on top of the fact that it's just something that I've always really felt like has been my calling. I've done construction. I've worked the 16-hour days in the hot, 90-degree weather, or when it's pouring rain. And personally, it's I want to change a career, and I want something that I can go home at the end of the day and know that I had, myself done something to better somebody else's life or their day, or take care of my community. Most people say that, but my opinion, you get a lot of people that maybe just want a paycheck, and that's not the case for me, at least.
Okay. Very good. So aside, like a pause button, we're going to say, I know that you're testing with a few agencies. Do you want to pick a city? Because, the question would have a little bit more to do with what this department would be. I know that you told me that you're looking at a range of different cities. So,
Yeah, I think we could just pick a certain city. That should be fine.
okay.
Is that what you're talking to me?
Yeah, exactly. Okay. Yeah, exactly. Do you have one in mind? Do you want to pick? Like, I'm that department right now.
Okay, we'll do Pierce County.
Okay, fantastic. So, Zach, thank you for that answer. Can you tell us why Pierce County Sheriff's Office? What stands out about us as far as an agency that you'd like to work for?
Every time that I have seen Pierce County, whether it's in person, maybe they're parked at a mall or at a parade, or there's Ording has a parade that goes on, and Pierce County is always there, and every time you see them, they always got a smile on their face. They're always friendly, they're always welcoming, and in my opinion, that's how policing should be done. Is it's not, in the public's eye, sometimes there's some negative views, and in my opinion, it's all about presentation as yourself as an officer, being professional, and how you put yourself forward, coming, whether it's into a conversation with public, or with incidents, and then how you respond to that. And so, in my opinion, Pierce County always presents itself well, in my experience. Now, as well as that, the amount that I could pursue, this career going forward, coming into, being just a deputy, and all the different avenues within that department that you can move up in, something that interests me so much. I've always been somebody who has always pursued more than just one singular thing. I'm not a stagnant person. I always want to better the company that I work for, or, and per se, the department, and pursue goals. I set myself goals, and I pursue to achieve those goals. And I think that that helps you grow as a person, and also helps you grow in this particular case as an officer as well. Not just staying stagnant and being okay with, and there's nothing wrong with patrol officers, of course, but, trying to better yourself and pursue something more. Because I was always told, even from a young age, knowledge is power. Pursuing something and not being stagnant will help you, succeed in the long run.
Okay, fantastic. What are some things? What are your strongest traits that you believe would make you an asset here on our team? You talked a little bit about it.
Yeah, I think. Sorry, go ahead. Was that all?
Oh, that's all. Yeah.
Okay. Honesty and integrity are my two number one, top traits, on top of, I have a saying: early is on time is late, and late is unacceptable. And my dad was in the military, and before that, so he'd always instilled that in me from the day I was, we were up at 6 a.m. and making our beds, stuff like that, So, on top of that, just trying to be sharp and attentive to detail, being aware. But honesty, is one of the most important things in police work. It is something that they throw at you from the beginning, and that it is just to the key. Like, that's the only thing that can get you cut out of the program for good. So step one, honesty, integrity. So, my job now, I have to clock my hours. I track my own hours and everything. And I either, I down to the T about it, honest with my boss. I could, take that and run with it, but I don't, because I had grown up knowing that you are your only person to hold yourself accountable. And, I think integrity is also one of the also most important key assets to have as a police officer, because you have to hold yourself accountable. You have to recreate a scene and not be lazy about it, because if something happens, then I think, my opinion, if you if you just are just lackadaisical about this report, not giving start to finish detail about what had unfolded on the scene, not getting all the information, and then not being honest with it. Maybe you're tired, you just worked a 12-hour shift and you're just writing a report out and you're just, falling asleep. And I think it's important to always have that, like somebody knows, excuse me, Zach gets it done every time, or Joe gets it done every time, no matter what. We know that all these reports are accurate, and they're always going to be on time, and you're never going to be having to deal with poor penmanship or what. You have your name, and you keep your name up on that board. We know he's a star player. It's like being a star player on a football team, or a quarterback. Somebody's always going to rely on you to make that pass.
Okay, fantastic. What you brought up, honesty, integrity, and some examples of that. Can you tell me about a situation where your ethics came into play and where you had to make an ethical decision? Can you tell me about that situation, what you did, and what the result was?
Yeah, so I would say there was a time where I was living in Iowa at the time, and I was working at a facility, hydraulic hose manufacturing facility. And there's a gentleman there that, when he was crimping the fittings on these hydraulic hoses, understanding these things push out 20,000 PSI at a time, or can withstand 20,000 PSI at a time. So, when we were crimping the fittings on the ends of this hose, sometimes he wouldn't do the QC check, make sure they're completely crimped, make sure that they're, pressure tight and everything's good. And at that point in time, I had a decision to make on whether to, looking at that, I could have ignored it, right? And I could have just said, oh, whatever, but instead I had talked to him and said, hey, making sure that you're checking those right, and he had a couple of years ahead of me too. So he's been there quite some time. I'd been there for about a year or two at that point in time, or no, a year, sorry. Oh, no, 6 months. Okay. 6 months. And so, going past that, he, it kind of got argumentative with me. Hey, like, it doesn't matter. What do they care? And I was like, no. I was like, you understand that could be somebody's life in your hand, because if a mechanic goes to, whether they're going to change that or put that on, and then they go to test it and they're right there and that thing blows up, it could be their life right there. So after that, I discussed with it some more and said, okay, well, it seems like you're not going to change your mind, so I'll just have to go discuss it with the team lead and just see what they think. And he, again, kind of got more, aggressive with me and, hey, man, you don't got to do that. You're going to get me fired. And said, hey, I'm not here to get you fired. I'm here because, I'm here to do my job. And as my partner, I also expect you to have that same quality of workmanship. That's, in my opinion, one time where I could have, I think, integrity for me, that one would be an example of integrity. Holding myself to a certain standard, even if I could have just let it pass. So.
Okay. Yeah. Appreciate that. Thank you. The next question, can you tell us about a time where you took it upon yourself to get something accomplished? You took initiative, what that situation was and how that played out.
So I would say this job now, what I'm doing right now, we have a lot of quotas we need to make, a lot of different things that I'm responsible for currently being one of the, there's me, my boss, and then I have one more gentleman who's my shop foreman. And so I remember there was these set amount of things that we had to do that day, say about 6 or 7 different tasks that easily in detail could have taken up at least, a quarter of the day. And our start time was about 10 o'clock. And so instead I woke up that morning about 2 a.m., 3 a.m., got some coffee, headed out the door, headed to the shop early. And, I've always kind of been an early riser for myself, just always wake up about that 2-3 o'clock mark, 4 o'clock, somewhere around there. And so I just started one thing at a time. I wrote them all down the night prior, started one thing at a time. We're putting this away. The next would be, okay, we got to get this project done. And after that, boss comes in. Oh, I see that you got all this stuff taken care of. And moving forward after that, working into the night and just getting it done. And it ended up being a 16, 17-hour day that day. Just continuing on and on, knowing I'm tired. Okay, I'll go get a coffee and I'll come back, take a lunch, eat some food, make sure you're keeping, a good amount of protein in your body. But, and I feel like that's a great example as to starting, an initiative to get things going. Is I could have started at 8 o'clock, but instead I decided to start early and start without everybody else and to push myself and drive myself, knowing that we get this all done in this one day, the rest of the week can be so much easier for everybody else.
Okay, great. Can you tell me about what diversity as a concept means to you and how you bring your own unique background and outlook to the team here at Pierce County?
So in my opinion, I think it's about inclusion, in my opinion, and making sure that everybody in that team has their job and you find their strong points. Looking at what skills they have and talking to them about it and seeing how you can, I guess, how everybody can play their own part and where they can assist in certain areas. Man, that's a good question. And that's my opinion. It's just keeping, I feel like having an office of all one mindset, I feel like only keeps you on one road. But the more that you get people where they have an expanded mindset and they're willing to accept new ideas, and that's how you get the job done. And that's how you, if you're at a roadblock and you need to get around the roadblock and there's 3 guys, none of them know what to do. What do? You call your 4th friend and you say, hey, how do we get around this? And it's all about being able to share that and work together as a team to solve one issue, because maybe what somebody sees or somebody doesn't see, somebody else will.
Okay. Thank you. And when you think about law enforcement today, what do you think are some of the most significant challenges facing the profession, and what do you plan to do to navigate it for yourself?
I think, a lot of things I think I see online are people being angry because of situations that have happened in different scenarios, different cities, or even cities around here too. And whether it's, tension between, whether it's, tension between police and civilians, or, and just how people are perceiving how officers, may react in certain situations, not understanding certain things that they go through. and a lot of things as well as not. And this could be a controversial topic, but people or police not being able to police nowadays, and in certain instances, my opinion, I think when an officer is trained right, and when an officer has that integrity, has that honesty, and is, on the straight and narrow with himself, and is, there to do that job correctly, and is not there to collect just a paycheck, then, is passionate about that job, really passionate, then do you really kind of step into that realm of, correct policing? Because there are some people out there that can put a bad name on police officers. Maybe it could be somebody out there that is in it for the wrong reasons and doesn't know it, or is pursuing it for the wrong reasons and doesn't know it, or they might know it. And there's also people out there that are doing great things. And I think, in my opinion, it's just about. I forgot the question you asked me.
You're okay. So I was asking about challenges in law enforcement, and then what you plan to do about it to combat that.
I can stop rambling. But I guess turning back to where I was. So I think, in my opinion, everyone needs to be treated with the benefit of the doubt. Gone are the days of maybe somebody profiling or casing somebody out. Of course, observation is a great thing to do as an officer. It's the one thing is, keep, you trust your gut. That is the number one thing that I feel like is trusting your gut in certain situations. And that's the thing that I feel like that'll really keep you alive. And also being open, but knowing that in any situation of any walk of life, anybody could just like that, just snap and just, and have something go on or change who they are. And just, like I said, I think giving everybody the benefit of the doubt, in my opinion, is always super important moving forward when it comes to, maybe tension between police officers and civilians. Somebody walks up to you and is swearing at you. It's kind of I think it's like, okay, like, let's calm things down. Let's talk about this. What's going on here? Why are we upset? And keeping yourself calm and collect while you're trying to understand what's going on, instead of just snapping to, just ready mode. Kind of coming back off of what that conversation was. So, that I butchered that.
Okay. Sorry. That's all the questions we have. What questions do you have for me today?
I was just more or less curious. I haven't prepared enough.
It's okay. So you're good. I throw that out there just as a reminder because people will generally ask that. But you were put on the spot, and for the listeners. So one, bravo, man. For the listeners, you didn't know we were doing a mock today, right? So you reached out for some feedback, to talk about it, to get some insight and coaching tips. I proposed this before we started recording. I was like, hey man, I could run you through off the cuff. Like I could run you through an oral board, or we could just talk about concepts and go through it kind of thing by thing. So with no nudge, like I appreciate you to take on the hard part, which is an imaginary play, like literally, right? We started and then we decided it's Pierce County. So for you to not have a specific question about Pierce County, like I get it, man. So
I think for me, it would be off the cuff. Now that I had a second to think about it, I think it would be, what is offered between, the department and like, all the different positions and how can you expand throughout the company and grow with the company itself, or with the department, company.
Yes.
With the department. That's my construction background, or my blue collar background, speaking out.
No, that's good. So we'll start with that so I don't forget. But there's elements of the question that I like because it shows that you're thinking about forward progress, you're thinking about development. However, any question you have, you should have done some homework, right? So I hate like a bad question or a not as great question is like, hey, what shifts do you work? Because most have that on their website, right? But if you say, hey, I saw these units of note, what are some ways that an officer such as myself or a future officer can develop towards those goals? Because investigations and canine are of extreme interest to me. Then they're like, okay, cool. This dude is thinking about what's coming ahead, not just he's goal oriented. He wants to be an asset. The right types of leaders will hear that as a good thing. Not, oh, this guy thinks he can do whatever he wants in 6 months. It's not like that. So especially when you ask it the right way. So good question.
Thank you.
So shake the nerves off. You're put on the spot. You already know. Right? You kind of mentioned it a few times, right?
Yeah, I felt like I was talking to one of my dad's friends or something like that. It was just like,
what's that supposed to mean? Making me feel old, man.
It's just like, no. It's just like, every time they had asked me how I was when I was younger, it was always like, just like I was put on the spot. Ask me, oh, how's school going? Oh, this, that. So I just always felt like that. But
yeah, well, I'm going to spit a lot of stuff at you, so feel free to chime in and look for any clarifying stuff. The good thing is this will all be recorded for you to listen to later. But yeah, please take notes as you want. There's definitely some kind of large themes, that I have in the article I sent you, and then that I try to hit on in the earlier old episodes, looking at interviews specifically, but also nitty gritty into the different answers. So overall, you were put on the spot, but some overall themes that I'll say for you and everyone is do practice. It makes such a difference. I recently went for a commander assessment and I had to do a presentation. I had to build a PowerPoint, and then I had to know it was going to be up to 20 minutes but not go over. So I had to rehearse it. And I'd worked on that PowerPoint for probably, a week and a half, right? And then that was when I first started going through it. And the first time I just tried to do a dry run where I put my timer on my phone, I ended up getting like halfway through and it was 24 minutes. So, you chuckle at yourself for rambling. And for sure, I had all my slides built out, but I was going off the path, right? I started talking about all these other ideas I had related to that idea. So I'm like, no, I got to stick to the script. So all to say, you don't know until you record. A lot of these oral boards will be a certain time. They might tell you ahead of time, but generally they're not really going to be over 30 minutes. We all have our filler words, and I make fun of myself still, even though I literally have a podcast and I pop up on other people's podcasts and I'm saying, and well. So it's things that I have to work on. So we all know there's embrace the pause is kind of a theme, right? When you hear that question, and you even caught yourself one time, right, where you said, now that I have a second to think about it, well, cool, take that second. There's nothing wrong with that. Because leaders and the assessors are going to see you. They see people testing all the time. When you listen intently, you take a moment. It probably feels like an eternity to you, but it's only a half second to a second. There's nothing wrong with taking a breath. There's nothing wrong with asking them to repeat the question. It's way better than answering half the question and just rolling with it and nodding to them like next. If you get some momentum and you kind of you show your human side, you smirk a little bit, you say, my bad, can you rephrase that last part? I want to make sure I hit all parts of the question. That looks to me and most reasonable people like diligence, right? They're not going to penalize you for double checking. So take notes. So we talked about this a little bit before, but after every interview you have, take notes, and take notes as you're preparing. And for me, the big things are, you heard some questions today, and one's about ethics, one's about a challenge, and maybe you get asked about diversity, maybe you get asked about a workplace issue. Well, my ethical situation question, you used a workplace conflict answer, right? A story. So that story could be a plug and play for all these different types of questions. But my
Yeah.
suggestion would be for most candidates to have your 5 to 10 stories that make you, right? I think it was Rogan or someone that said, "Hey, what would you put in the movie reel of your life or the teaser to your movie?" And that's going to be stuff from childhood, right? And you shared with me that you're kind of vague in the interview. You're just like, "Hey, someone in my life." I mean, just say your dad, like, right? Your parent
Okay.
was a cop.
Yeah.
And that
Yeah.
hits home, right? Because people are like, "Oh, he's a kid that grew up with that." It's a different life that cops know. It's a different life than the kid that met their dare officer. Nothing wrong with that, but it's just different when it's in your household. So then they know you get it to a different level. So feel free
I just didn't,
be open.
I don't want to name throw,
it's
in
not
an
like
interview.
that.
I heard that's big, not good.
It's
so
not like that. If it's like you're like, well, I have met Deputy Chief and I've also the school resource officer at your agency and that's different. But when it's your area, regional, hometown, your family's in law enforcement, your dad was in it, and that's what inspired you. So know these stories, but then have kind of bullet points, and you could have this on a Word document. You could have this on a notepad on your phone, like on an app. That's my suggestion, is because then you can walk around and you might be at the job site and think of this great idea. Plug it in your notes, right? You're going to have this thing for weeks, months, maybe testing, and you might refine some of these things. You might tell these stories to your buddy, to your girlfriend, and ask them to pick apart, okay, what are the fluffy parts that I don't need to talk about that aren't really on point? Because you recognize it, right? When you're like, oh, I need to stop rambling. You're going all over the place. Yeah. So when you stick to the script, kind of like I shared in my story, then it's going to be concise. And when time's a factor and you want to get through all the questions, then you can be sure that you're going to the story well, but you also know how you want to tell it. So you hit the points that are important, and then you can get the literal or general points for answering the question fully.
Yeah, being precise in that factor, correct?
Yeah, exactly. So another thing in general is look for feedback, and I kind of talked about that, right? Practicing with people, taking notes for yourself. You're doing that by reaching out to me and putting yourself under the microscope. So kudos to you. A lot of people aren't going to do it. They're just going to figure it out and then probably lose some opportunities because of that.
Yeah.
Talked about that. One thing I just want to touch on, and for listeners, is that you have to assume that they don't have your resume. You have to assume that they didn't look at your personal history questionnaire, because sometimes they're not allowed to. Oftentimes they're not allowed to. They just know you as a name or a candidate number, and you show up as you show up. So if it's not said to the board in that room, you're not getting credit for it. So your job history, your current job, maybe some applicants will say, yeah, where I work right now, and kind of assume that they know, and they don't know the title. They don't know all your responsibilities, how many people you supervise, what you're in charge of. You do have to spell that out. So I love that, jumping ahead, but I love that in that one question, you're talking about the people that work under you and alongside you. So you got a glimpse of it, but kind of spell it out, because you have to assume they don't know your industry either. And some of the answers, you did a really good job kind of underlying the risks, and we'll get to that too. In the chief's interview or command board, generally they have your background packet. You'll know based on your background investigator how much you've told them. So they might have been briefed. That's how we do it, where the chiefs, the bosses, have been briefed on just about everything we found out. Your background's almost done by the time you come to ours. But every agency is different, right? So when you come into the testing process, you need to be aware of what their process is. Most agencies are really good about sharing that to set you up for success. But if they don't, just clarify and take notes, right? Because if you're testing numerous places, you can get definitely a little bit mixed up. Some do polygraph right at the beginning, and some do it right at the end, and everything in between. So,
yeah, for sure. No, I agree with that, especially testing with multiple different places. You're trying to fan out and just see where you're at. So I get that.
Yeah. You had some good examples, and we'll dive into it shortly. But again, streamline it, right? So, what your main story is. And when you have those lined out, then you'll know, right? So, as you're going and you've practiced this mentally a little bit more, you're going to be able to go into the interview. And maybe when you get asked the ethical situation, maybe you don't really use that conflict one, but you've thought about ethical situations and maybe a story from being on a sports team as a teenager, maybe a story from childhood just hits that topic better, kind of developmental to your core values and illustrates that. And so that could be, yeah, what's that?
I have one locked and loaded.
That's awesome. So yeah, and if for the listeners that don't have that, oftentimes we don't give ourselves as much credit as those that know us, right? We're our hardest critics at times. So ask your parents, ask your significant other, ask your close circle of friends, hey, what should I be most proud of? Like, what are my best qualities? Because I guarantee you, unless if I ask my buddy or I start thinking about what my buddies would say, it's not what I would say. But I appreciate it as a compliment for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
All that wraps into know your audience. Generally, it's going to be cops. So you don't feel the need to use their lingo, but understand that you're not fighting the battle of PR. Like, if I say, yeah, cops can't do their job, you're not going to have a bunch of people across the table saying, what are you talking about? Of course they can. They're too empowered, right? They're going to get it, right? So you had to answer like, yeah, police aren't able to police, but here's what I think about it. Here's where I think we can go. And so they're going to have sympathizers with how you feel about coming into the job. I say that to say there are some people that, and this is not supposed to be political, but recognize there are some people that they want to be the change in police. And I think I'm all for what that could mean. But some people, maybe in larger cities, are trying to sign up for the police and they think that throw the baby out with the bathwater. And so know your audience, like that probably won't work out well. But if you say, hey, there's challenges, we have a lot of good things going. I want to add to that energy. I want to offer some new ideas, some new insight, for my generation. That's always a thing in just developing society. Then maybe you have more listeners, more intrigue. So that just goes in tow with knowing your brand. And I write about that, but really, like, who is Zach? Like, if there's a room of 100 men and women, there's got to be a super short, again, like a movie teaser. What's going to make you stand out? So at the end of a day, long days where some people are dry and they do not smile and they do not, like the applicants. And you're like, does this person have a personality? And you're like, when's lunch? And you're staring at your watch. Like, I've been on those boards, right? And it's painful, but you want people at the end of the day to be like, Zach. Oh, yeah, he was the project worker. He's from Enumclaw. Remember, his dad was a cop, right? So because there's things that you want to portray, a certain energy, a certain vibe, certain values. Yeah. So your goal is what's that?
Oh, sorry. No, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, you're good. Your goal is that by the end of every oral board, you're like, did I hit on those things? Did they get that? I think so. And that's going to be a win.
Yeah. What I was going to say is when you said, how do I stand out? I'm 6'6". So,
Oh yeah, the tall dude
standing.
Yeah, but it should literally it should be the tall dude. Yeah, he had a good presence. He was super optimistic. What's he do again? Oh yeah, rather than he was super tall. Well, I don't remember anything about him.
I don't want to be the one thing. Yeah. I don't want to have a dull personality. Yeah, I think I remember him. I think the only thing to remember that, but. No, I think I completely agree with that. Eye contact is one thing that like I always go for, and even like now with coming forward with us doing the video viewers can't see.
It's a video call,
the
but
video
we don't
call
have it recorded,
and so I think eye contact and something especially like that shows respect. It shows that you're willing of attentiveness.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely can say I need to practice that too. I definitely try when I have conversations with people, like customers or something like that, always with eye contact and just show a sign of respect. And I think that'll help maybe carry forward with that. And then just presenting yourself with a smile, not being a stale Pop-Tart.
Yeah, and that's good. And eye contact is, in our society, it is a sign of confidence, and it's a sign of giving people their full attention. So that is something that's really good to recognize. Some last kind of overall things is, yeah, you got the nerves. I could tell, right? We're jumping into it, you're like, oh, here we go. But that's good. And I heard a podcast recently that was talking about how you can frame your nerves rather than having them throw you off and being frustrated. Like, oh, why am I so nervy? It's your body saying, like, this is important to you, right? It's adrenaline. It's things that you get nerves when you do fun things too, right? That are exciting. So say, hey, like, this matters. I'm going to perform. It's kind of like you're up at bat. It's kind of like you're stepping on the stage. You're like, this is my time. So those nerves can be good if you put them in the right frame. So I think visualization and just framing is really important too. So you have the confidence and you don't shut down.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. Yeah, because I felt like I was going to freeze up there for a minute, and I just kind of like kept inching forward and powering through it. Like I was in quicksand for a minute there.
You're good. You're good. And it's uncomfortable, right? So good on you for trying and going in this uncomfortable vein.
First time I've ever something like that. Like, I mean, other than interviews for jobs, but I mean, and nothing has ever, I think, in my life been this important. And so having that, even as just a practice one, it just kind of threw me through a loop because I was like treating it like it was real. Like I genuinely was like, okay.
I could tell, yeah.
And every time that I'd get nervous or like something I would start to kind of falter, or I'd start kind of slowing down, and I'd just kind of kick myself like, oh man, okay.
Yeah, but you got to keep rolling. You can't even do that, right? They see that, and you're broadcasting that to yourself, right? So it becomes negative self-talk. But you recognize. So we'll roll into the questions. So the first one, tell me about yourself. That's a great example where you can have like bullet points. Like, this is your hero statement in like 2 or 3 minutes. What do you want them to know about you? Like who you are as a person. Your upbringing could be it could definitely be distilled down to, I grew up, I had a great childhood and wasn't exposed to a lot, like small town, loved that vibe. And as I grew up, I started seeing more issues and crime. My dad's a cop and I'm learning about the world. And when you talk about a calling, okay, that's where people lean in. You're like, because a lot of people do believe police is a calling, but why? Like, that's your moment to illustrate that. And you need to back that up, because not just, hey, it's a calling. Too commonly, I think everyone says, oh, I want to help people. And my throwback to that is, everyone helps people. Like every job I've ever had, I help people, but not in this way. So why this way? And there's people that work for Teach Across America. There's mentors, there's coaches, there's healthcare workers. They're certainly just as valuable, but why this? You'll need to take some notes and some soul searching, and boil that down and run that by some people. Run it by, your pops and some of his old war buddies. So yeah. But any questions on that?
I think I think the nerves are what got me, I think, the most for that. Like, because that was like, I knew it because I listened to your podcast. It's either you or there's another podcast I listened to as well at one point in time, and it said, don't mention. I think it was you and your podcast that it was like, don't mention. You just want to help people. Like, everyone helps people. Yeah, and it's why are you passionate about this? Why do you want to do this job? And it's not just because you want to help people. I mean, you could, like you said, you could go be, paramedic or go do, this, other volunteer stuff. But what about this job specifically?
Yeah. And don't be afraid. Like, again, your audience is probably going to be in uniforms across the table. So don't be afraid to say, I am so frustrated when I see people taking advantage, when I see danger, and I want to do something about it, but I want to do something about it directly. There's nothing wrong. And you kind of made a nod to it, but there's nothing wrong with saying you want to take bad people to jail, right? And then when they get a vibe for you, they're like, okay, this isn't some aggressive person that wants to, just be in the movies. No, you want to hold people to account. You brought up a story that involved accountability. So you want the board to get those things, right? And so what it is about the job. And maybe it's just like, everyone's different, right? Some people, they really visualize, I want to help kids in a bad situation. I know I have this great patience. I have this real knack for working with kids, and also it feeds my soul. There's nothing wrong with saying that. I bet people would love to hear that. And some testers are afraid. They're like, man, I don't want to seem too fluffy. You're like, no, but if that's really you, be you, right? So be authentic. People are assessing, authentic and professional. People are assessing their future team, their future backup, their future people that are going to work for them, right? And a lot of times there's some bosses or some up and coming leaders on the other side of the table, FTOs, and they're like, all right, I want that guy in the car. I believe in him or her. So yeah, feel free to, be as vulnerable as you feel comfortable with. Some people do. I've seen on boards where they really share a very personal story. Either they were a victim of something or someone close to them was, and they've gotten emotional. I would say if you feel comfortable with it and it's not distracting, right? Like, you're where you can't compose yourself, then certainly don't, right? That's you're not comfortable with it. So if you are, I've seen that work really well with just having people get to know someone. So same thing. I'll kind of rolling into why Pierce County. I love that you had something that wasn't like from the website. Like, it's your personal experience. You're like, I grew up seeing them, and they portray this confidence in me and this confidence for the job and how they do things, and they're doing things right. Again, know your audience, and there's a difference between giving compliments and just like, getting distracting where you're just like singing their praises and you're like, come on, man, like seriously.
Fudging it a little bit.
Yeah. No, but it felt real. It felt genuine. Clearly it wasn't prepared. So I think that was great. Again, the main themes are just keep it on point, keep it to task on why you visualize yourself being in that uniform or with that patch. Something about them, right? Again, it shows that you've done some homework. Yes, please read the website. Some people go into tests, they know nothing about the agency. It's kind of embarrassing, but it's not about memorizing the name of the council members and this and that. Sure, the population, don't memorize that stuff. Like, get a general vibe of the issues. If you do your homework, go past like the entry page, but look at what the chief's been saying about what issues are facing the community, right? What are people bringing up? Council minutes are kind of a nerdy but really good resource to get a vibe of what people are caring about, because that's what the police department cares about. So,
let's see. I think I was inaccurate on one thing I said too. I'm sorry to interrupt.
Oh, no, please.
I think it wasn't. It was at the Puyallup Fair. There was some. I remember there's some parade. I think at Puyallup, but I don't know if it was an Ording. I can't recall if it was Ording or Puyallup, but just for reference to maybe if if you have a listener or something like that, it's like, oh wait, they're on Ording.
That guy's a liar.
I think it was one of those, but I mean, at some point in time in my life, it was some sort of, I see him out, there's a parade going through. And so that's the one thing I picture in my mind for some reason, is one of them that's standing there. So,
yeah. But when you have the example, and maybe you don't name it, but you're like, at community events, parades, it's been an icon for me, or an example. So that's good. It shows it's personal. Traits, again, with some prep, you know what you want to say. And so if you're asked something about traits, I would say, okay, what would I want to hear? Not, I want to hear briefly, like what they are. I want to hear what that means to you, not like a textbook answer, but like in simple terms, like, what does honesty, integrity mean? Because you're right. Any law enforcement officer is going to say those are the biggest things, but is that just you reciting it, or is that like what it means to you? And so I think that's extra points. If someone asks you about strongest traits, they might ask, can you give an example? So if you already have the example, like, fantastic. And that's just going to flesh your answer out more.
Yeah. I see that, and that's where I think having those like the star points.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're talking about.
So I was writing.
Oh, okay. Yeah, but you bring up star, but it's there's a model for that, right? In answering in interviews, right? So situation, I believe it's situation, task, action, and result.
My dad had mentioned it to me and said, "Oh, that's the way you're going to pass."
Mm-hmm.
I'll look at it, went on their website, or just looked up not the website, look it up on Google and kind of.
For sure. And if someone's just like, man, Tung's an idiot, I just looked it up. It's not that. Yeah, the same concept, right? What's the situation? What happened? What did you do personally, right? Because a lot of people lose points when they say the team, or we. No, what did you, Zach, do? And then what was the result? So that's what people kind of fall off on. And oftentimes is their follow-up, right? Because it's not just, you show up and it's all good. Usually there's follow-up, especially with workplace dynamics, conflict. How did things go after that? So just remember all parts again. And if you get excited in the moment, there's nothing wrong with smiling and saying, sorry, what was the last part of the question? I just want to make sure I hit all the parts. Someone they won't say no. They'll say, oh yeah, it's what happened.
We're all human at some point in time.
Yeah. And, another piece that it jumps into mind is when you're interviewing and you're testing, yes, you're going to show up. And my goal is for everyone listening, every interview you go through, you smoke it, right? But at the same time, the agency, they should be allowing you to interview, right? They should be asking you if you have any questions at the end. They should be treating you like an asset when they bring you in the door, not just all standoffish, like, oh, prove yourself. And that's where police departments are succeeding, is when they treat their candidates well, because that's how they're going to treat their future people that they hire. And where they don't is this really old, antiquated notion of like, well, they'll prove themselves or they won't. And where does that get anyone? So, but yeah, sidebar.
No, I appreciate that. That's something I think I've considered, and I think I'm looking forward to that, to seeing if there's any difference between the different places that I'm wanting to apply to.
Yeah, and it's a great opportunity when you get set up for the oral board or after you test. The first contact, maybe you initiate it, right? If it's been a few days and no one's emailed you after you sent your scores, say, I'd love an opportunity to learn more about you. Could I get in contact with a recruiter? Could I come on a ride along? And they'll tell you, right? Some places, we're so busy because we have so many student officers, humble brag. We did a lot of hiring, but we have to wait kind of till backgrounds, to get people into ride-alongs, which is a good problem to have. But we'll do everything shy of that, right? We'll do tours, but everyone should do that, whether they have a full-time recruiter or just a liaison. Like, they should be able to engage you. So if you can get a ride-along before the interview, fantastic, right? Then you have a lot more ammo to share when you're talking about why Pierce County, right? Again, all that. Look at their social media. Pierce County does a fantastic job with social media and bridging with the public. So,
I did that with Ording, and I did a ride along with them, and then I tried, I think, with Pierce County, but I never got a response. So I'll have to go back out there and try again. But
yeah,
it's fine. I'll put the pressure on them and see.
Okay.
Hopefully.
Yeah, and reach out to the other ones too. So. Ethics, I like the example. One note I wrote, but you hit it, was what are the risks, right? So you want to, again, it goes with choosing good stories, good examples. And that's a good one, right? Because you have, what's a really good oral board answer for different types of questions, right? That I kind of said and shared. But you could plug that one in, because the risks are you have, an apathetic coworker. You show direct conflict, and that's what people are assessing for often, right? They want to know that you are self-assured and you're going to stand up for what's right and you're going to put it on the line. And sometimes it's not being a jerk. It's not being like a textbook, like, hey, I'm calling you out and we're reporting you to the boss. But you're having direct feedback with who you need to. It cannot slide. All right. You said lives are at stake. This could blow. Someone could get seriously hurt or killed. So you outline that because as the assessor, I don't know, but you said it. So now I know. So again, it's just streamlining that. It shows accountability that you care about that. And there's nothing wrong with spelling it out and helping the assessors know, because they might not be looking for the answers. They might be after lunch, where you said, accountability is huge to me. And it's not about getting people in trouble. But if people aren't responsive, I don't supervise that guy. I don't have the say so. If he's not responsive to counseling and direct feedback, and I need to make sure it doesn't happen again if I'm not around, then it is appropriate for my boss to know. And that's for the betterment of the team. That's better for the customer. The risks just aren't worth it. That shows me that as a future cop, I'm like, okay, he gets it. Like, it's not just when people are looking. It's about setting the tone. Every moment matters. So, just feel comfortable highlighting what you think the biggest takeaway should be, because sometimes you do have to spell it out. Or maybe they missed it, and then when you spell it out, they'll give you the additional points.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
Yeah, no questions on that one. That's pretty straightforward.
Cool. And then the initiative one, this one was a little harder to follow, and I think that it's there's a project, right? But ultimately, you spell it out like we have low attention spans, because we do these days. Spelled out like we don't know, but just say, hey, here's the project. Here's all the factors that made it seemingly insurmountable, and here's all the things I did above and beyond to make sure it got done. Because if it didn't, these are the risks, and the reward was this. And I had more success for the team. My boss trusted me more. I took on more responsibilities, whatever have you, right? You're really just painting the picture. But I think that when we go back to the original points of when you have that story bulleted out, then it'll be fine.
Yeah. Having talking points almost for that story in particular.
Yeah. Diversity, I threw that one out because it's very common. It's been common since the time I hired on, almost 17 years ago. And it's just the concept of it is not so much like, again, not just like you Google it and okay, diversity matters, but what is it? Like, what does it matter? Why does that matter? Just have you thought about it, how you bring your upbringing to the table, right? Because your outlook is very valuable. Like, everyone's individual outlook is very valuable on a team, to recognize it. I like that you talk about inclusion, right? That's a big buzzword in the last few years. And so what does that mean? And what does that mean to you? And what are some examples that you bring to that? Some of that might be the things you expose yourself to, ideas, thoughts, right? You found your way around that. But then that's going to make the board hungry to know, okay, like, in what ways? And then they might challenge you with, okay, like, how does that inform how you would police? And maybe you talk about some of your exposures, you talk about culture, your culture, other cultures. But I think when you play with that and you take some notes and think about how you want to flesh that out, you'll find something that can be cohesive for you. Yeah,
for sure.
Cool,
I think you could go really into detail with that. I mean, that could, if you're not careful, you could just, I feel like, at least for me, just keep going and keep going, keep going.
Yeah, and that's dangerous. You don't want that, right? Because it shows, it feels scattered and loose. And sometimes, especially in an interview where you're being scrutinized, for lack of a better word, right? Just like if I hop on a podcast, if I start going off script and I talk about diversity, I might just vomit something that sounds like it could be a really bad soundbite, and it's not what I mean, but my mind's thinking of all these things, right? I'm thinking like, I love people from a diverse background, but then I'm thinking the politics and the scrutiny and all this like polarizing stuff, and then I don't even know what are people hearing when I'm just kind of verbalizing my thoughts.
There's so many different ways I feel like you can travel that conversation, whether it's diversity with like your raising up in your background, or like like ethics or ethnics as well, like that different diversity. It depends on how you take the word. Yeah, and most will have some sort of concrete answer, right? They might say, hey, how do you bring your background into play, around other cultures that aren't yours? Or they might say, can you tell us about a time when you encountered, someone from a diverse background? And maybe you have an experience, maybe a buddy that you saw something prejudicial happening to him or her. Maybe that informs your personal take on it, or to yourself, right? So, cool. The last main question I asked you was about challenges in law enforcement.
you had a lot of these pieces, but again, it's just getting down to a script, right? Like I can tell there are things that you're very conscious of, right? Growing up around here, living, and being an adult in the last few years, and then having family in law enforcement, of course, the scrutiny, the tension, the police abilities to do their job. These are big things that are clearly on your mind. It's just, of course, being on the spot, you're trying to wrap it all together. So I heard you say a lot of really good things and themes, where it kind of got away because, you're, as you said, you're kind of rambling, is you're thinking about all these things and you're speaking because it's uncomfortable to be quiet and still while you process it, right? But you're going to have prep time. So things like benefit of the doubt, that's good because you're saying I'm as an officer giving people I interact with benefit of the doubt, but I'm trusting my gut, I'm trusting my training. That's good, but it wasn't really clearly explained, right? At least I didn't hear it where you say give people the benefit of the doubt. Maybe you have a civilian on the board that's like, wait, we're going to give cops the benefit of the doubt? Like, that's the problem. We need to be objective, or whatnot. So being clear in what you're saying, knowing where you're going, because even when you say like trust your gut, some people probably can jump there and they want to go there. They want to think that they know what you're thinking, but really it's hard to know because it's really vague, right? Trusting your gut might be wrong. But maybe something in the middle, if I'm trying to remember everything with my notes, and what you're talking about is, yes, the challenges in law enforcement are these competing interests with extremely high scrutiny due to a lot of the controversies. It's made it difficult at times for police to do their job in the ways that they've been doing them. And so what I want to do about that, and so after thinking about that, what are some general thoughts that you have? Like, and they don't feel like you need to polish it, but just maybe ideas.
Yeah, I see what you mean. Okay.
Yeah, so I would lean it back to who you are as a person, who you intend to be as a cop. Leading by example. These are great themes that you can think about and kind of explain in your own words. And I would also take this opportunity to see what fill in the blank agency is doing that you think is helping the issue, right? So this is a perfect thing where you say, hey, there's challenges in law enforcement, there's controversy, there's protests over the last few years, a lot of social media and media scrutiny. But Pierce County, as I see it, has maintained this professional image, right? I see it on social media. I see it when I'm driving around the mall. I can't think of an incident where either, whether I was stopped or whether I was just walking by them clearly on a call where I saw unprofessionalism. And you just got to keep doing what you're doing. Everyone's watching. And when you have this strong presence, right? So you can kind of roll what you already perceive and believe about Pierce County, you can roll that into the answer. So, yeah, food for thought.
Yeah. Do you think if you're too, I guess, confident, like you almost force yourself to be confident instead of actually kind of feeling out the conversation, do you think that's a negative? Do you think being overconfident could be a negative in a sense to put you off as arrogant or cocky at all?
No. So confidence generally will help you test really well. And that's me, going from a lot of work to try to be more confident, especially as a younger officer. That confidence is key, right? Because that confidence translates into the unwritten, and the not in questions is this guy going to stand up for himself? Is this gal going to stand up for herself where someone's twice as heavy and balled up fists and is high? Like, is this person going to hold their own? Because these are things that cops are thinking. But also, is this person going to keep it composed when the most annoying person ever in the world on the worst day ever is barking about you being a racist and a bigot and you don't know what you're doing, you're just some dumb rookie does this person have the confidence and the self-assurance to keep it together and just be like, I don't even care what you say because it means zero, but I'm going to sit here and I'm going to maintain composure. I'm going to, I'm going to try to get through to you. And if it's not working, I'm going to, pack up my stuff and go. Or are you going to engage in the chipping match because you're not mature, because you have a chip on your shoulder, right? So, but you hit it too, right? Not cocky. Having talked to you before this call started recording, like clearly the issue is not cockiness. So, overcompensating for sure. People can read that, right? So that ultimately be you, right? Some people just have this amazing charisma. They light up the room. They walk in, they own the room, not in a cocky way. And I think that's kind of a gift. Certainly you can work on it. I don't think I have it. I think I'm constantly trying to improve it in some way, but some people have it, right? But then other people, we have all met them, but from the moment you meet them, you're like, you think that you're God's gift. And that's not a good thing. So,
there was one thing I think I had heard mentioned, but I just want to reiterate on it. I used to be, and still I'm working on it, but pretty quiet. I was quiet, kind of to myself, introverted. And when I started considering this career as an actual possibility instead of just a dream, I would find myself enacting random conversations with somebody in the store, when you're waiting in line. Talking about something. Oh, food prices are crazy. Gas prices are crazy right now. Like, well, what'd you get? Does it, coffee-wise, is it good? Yeah. Or especially now when I'm working with customers, I find myself relating and personalizing with them.
Yeah.
At no benefit to me to make commission at this job, but I find that it helps me become more comfortable with an acting conversation and or being able to navigate my way through a conversation.
Yeah.
So if there's anybody out there that that struggled with that, I feel like that's something I wouldn't say like go up in the middle of the night and just yell at somebody like, hey, you want to have a conversation? But if you're at a coffee shop and there's a couple of people in there, try it. I mean, the worst thing's gonna happen is they're gonna tell you go away or not want to talk to you.
Yeah, but I really like that for a couple of reasons, right? Because I'm definitely introverted. I was the extremely shy kid, and when I speak, I don't have a problem publicly speaking or doing interviews or hopping on a video, whatever. But it does drain me, right? If I give a presentation to a community group and it's 7 p.m., like I'm pretty wired for a while, and then I'm super tired. Like it takes a lot out of me. It doesn't, extroverts, it feeds them, right? They're like, oh, I'm good to go. Just another day in the office. But yeah, it definitely saps a lot of my energy. So I recognize that. So I love a couple things that, taken away from what you said is, one, you're visualizing, right? So that's a huge thing is, you're not just even walking up, you're like, okay, how would I engage this conversation? Because that is a thing from, my generation being millennials and after is, a lot of field training officers were like, man, people can't talk to people. You guys live on your cell phones and all this stuff. And for sure, like I grew up in the generation where like my teenage years, we were on instant messenger. For the younger adults, they're like, what is that, right? Like AOL instant messenger. And you're just chatting with all your friends and people. We had face-to-face, of course, but it's completely evolved. It's not to say you can't, but it also is really uncomfortable when we have especially younger individuals, but starting in police where you're in uniform and now you get this call and you're looking for, a Hispanic dude about 5 feet tall wearing all blue, and you're looking for, and he might have injuries on his face because, there was a white female that was supposedly the aggressor and yelling at everyone in the parking lot, and she walked the opposite way. And when you get up there and you see these people and a bunch of people standing around, like, how do you engage? And sometimes it's that simple, right? You just walk up and be like, hey, anyone see anything? And they're like, what? And you're like, I guess not, right? You're like, I'm looking for maybe a fight or an argument. And they're like, no. And you keep, you get back in your car, you keep driving, keep walking, whatever, right? But some people are so paralyzed in that because it's just not They're just not used to it. They don't have the prerogative. So I think that
Yeah.
visualization and practicing is fantastic because you have to act as if, right? And I tell some of my newer officers, like, act as if you're a 5-year cop. And then it sometimes gets a lot easier because they're thinking about this checklist of academy and, well, do I have the lawful purpose to talk to this person? Yes, you got the 911 call. Like, just think about what would an experienced officer do right now? Well, you'd probably start walking around, seeing what you see and see what you hear, right? Ask questions and see what people say. You're like, well, yeah, that makes sense. Okay, like, then when you start getting all this info and data, then pretty quickly you're like, okay, some crime of some sort has occurred. I don't know what level of assault, but someone's injured, so that's an assault, right? And so I think that that's another way to kind of just move things along, kind of simplify, kind of reverse engineer. But I love how you're just talking to people. Example is very helpful with that. I definitely find that, especially being an experienced officer, if I'm walking around at the store just getting some water or getting a snack, I make eye contact with everybody because I know they see me and I want them to see I see them, for safety, for awareness, but also because I feel like I'm an ambassador, right? I feel like when I make eye contact with someone and I'm going to smile and sometimes like dip my head or say, hey, how's it going? Or, hey, what's up? It's because I'm representing the badge and the uniform. Whereas me, just Eric at the store, no, I'm getting in, getting out. Like, I'm not there to make friends. I'm not there to make people feel uncomfortable. I got places to go, so I think it's kind of, maybe you're going that direction, but I kind of like the crossover as far as like how I see it.
Yeah, for sure. It's something that like I talked to my dad and gave him an example of it. And I was like, I love making people feel uncomfortable. Like, and when I say that, like when you go up to them and you talk to them, they're not expecting you to say anything because you come up and you're just kind of quiet. And like people don't expect it nowadays. You know how hard it is to have a conversation with somebody and not have it just end in like a plane crash and just the like horrible like awkward silence when like you say something and they like act like they don't hear you, or it's horrible. So to experience that and get those nerves out and kind of become more comfortable with personalizing yourself, knowing that regardless of what you say, it's not weird. It's just for some reason, like our generation has decided that talking to people face to face is like, I think just not important anymore, or it's just weird,
Yeah, it might be generational, it might be regional, like you hear about the Seattle area thing, but I love that, I think that's probably a good note to end on, but it's that David Goggins, like, get comfortable being uncomfortable, right? Because that's where all the growth happens, and whatever the thing is. So, but yeah, I really appreciate your time, man. Thanks for being on the call. I'm sure anyone listening, there's a lot learned. So thank you for being the guinea pig, the first of this feature. So on that note, I'll stay on the call for a sec, but we're going to wrap the recording. So for everyone listening, please continue to share it out. Appreciate your support, and we'll talk to you next time.